Hey everyone, and welcome back again to economics. I sound like I'm making one of those videos, that you find on YouTube, which is kind of ironic because today I'm going to share with you some fun videos on YouTube as well. But this is going to illustrate what we're talking about today in our session. So I think it's just a good way to have a little fun. So anyway, without further ado, we will get started. So today we are going to talk about we're going to start out, and first I'm going to build a foundation for us. So we're going to talk about something involving costs. So if you haven't already reviewed the cost definitions that I put, the little sheet that I put about accounting terms on your D2L, right now go and take a moment and review those just so you know, because I'm not going to go over them. That's for your accounting class, but just to refresh your memory, or if you've never had accounting, this will introduce you to these topics. Nothing big, nothing that you have to know too much about to understand the subject material that we're going over today. Just a few things that I wanted you to look at. All right, so that having been said, we will begin. So everything we've talked about deals with economic analysis. And economic analysis, for economic analysis, we look at marginal everything pretty much. So we look at marginal costs, marginal output, marginal revenue, all those things. And we're going to be talking more about those individually as the semester progresses. But for right now, we're going to talk about our marginal and our average costs. So economic analysis looks at marginal costs. It also looks at average costs. And that's cost divided by output. So we're going to take a look at what those look like. So you know that you have, first I want to build a graph for you of those. So show you what these curves look like. There's your graphs. And we'll have a Q right there. So Q, just so you remember, Q is output. So that's how much you're producing is Q. And that is a terrible looking Q. So I'm going to put it right here. I'll put another one. Her lowercase q. So that one's better. This one, we're just gonna mark it out right there. All right. Okay, sorry about that. And then on up here on this axis, we're gonna have our costs. And those costs will be in dollars. Okay, so I have costs in dollars. So we were in the sheet, that we have average total cost, fixed cost, and variable cost. So that's all those things divided by output. So if I told you the fixed costs, those are the ones that you're going to have to pay those regardless of what, no matter what. So you pay those, and those are going to be unchanged regardless of how much is the output. But you can take them and divide them by output. So for example, if you have a rent payment or a house payment, and you have 4 people in your family, that house payment is going to have to be paid regardless of whether you have family members move away. I have 4 people in my family. One of my daughters moved. My house payment is a fixed cost. I still have to pay it regardless of whether my daughter moves or not. But I can decide how much am I paying per individual in my household. I can take that payment and divide it by the number of people in my household. So that's where you get the average from. So you can divide average fixed cost. Now your variable costs, those are the ones, of course, that they're going to be dependent on your output. So if you produce nothing, you will have 0 variable costs, but you will still have fixed costs. If you produce 100 items, you're going to have a cost associated with each item. Whatever your variable cost for individual times 100, that's what you're going to have. And so when you put these on a curve, they're going to look something like this. So your variable cost is going to look like that. So that is your average variable costs, ABC. Now, your total costs, as you know, your total costs equal your fixed cost plus your variable cost. So therefore, total costs are bigger than variable cost, but it's going to look the same. It's going to look like that. So that is your average total cost right there. Now this shaded area in between, let's give this another color for that. this shaded area in between here, whew, all right, I'm not very good at that, am I? But I'm going to let y'all laugh at me and you'll see what I'm talking about. The shaded area there. These are your average fixed costs right there. So you can laugh at me for coloring outside the lines, but it's not that easy with this program that I'm using to do that. But at least you get the point right there, what I'm talking about. So the shaded area in between, I will just use my pointer there for it. That shaded area, that's your fixed cost. So you variable cost plus fixed cost equal your total cost. And it does look like that curved line there. Okay. Alrighty. And then if you wanted to add a marginal cost in there, just for the fun of it, just so you can see how it looks, what it looks like. So let me give you, let's see, the purple for that one. It's going to look like this. So it's going to look like, it'll start right here. And it'll kind of look like one of those dippers, Big Dipper or Little Dipper. But that is what the marginal cost curve looks like. Now we're going to talk more about marginal cost later. We'll get into that. But right now I just wanted you to see what these average cost curves look like so that we can use them to talk about another concept, okay? All right. All right, so I'm going to have to, right now, let's talk a little bit before we get into that. We've talked about now the variable cost, from what we're talking about with variable cost, fixed cost, all those average costs we were looking at, those are your short run costs, okay? So those are short run costs. You might want to go back and mark those. Those are your short run average total costs that look like that because we're talking about production points. So your variable cost, remember I told you that production decisions occur in the short run. How many units, whatever your little lowercase q, your little output's going to be, that's going to be decided in the short run. And we discussed the reasons why that makes sense. So what we're looking, those costs that we're looking at, because we're dividing them and we're looking at output in the short run, they're going to look like that. Now our long run costs, it looks the same. It looks a lot alike. However, it is it's a little different on principle. Okay, so for example, and please, 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 if you are an accountant, an accounting major, please do not be mad at me for this, because we're talking, I'm an economist and we view things a little differently. So it's good that we have accountants and economists working for businesses because we do view things a bit differently, but my accountants may have to adjust their thinking just for a moment. And please don't tell the accounting professors, I don't want them to get mad at me or think I'm teaching you just some kind of hooey that is not valid. But in economics, there are no fixed costs in the long run because everything can be changed. Now, let me explain what I mean. This is the one that my accountant students have a problem with because they're saying, okay, on the balance sheet or on the profit and loss statement, yes, there are fixed costs. You have to label those. And if you're doing a long run perspective, you include those. That is true. You do. However, in the long run, now for the short run, you know, Georgia Highlands, for example, they have a nice building where they hold classes, right? Every campus has a building where they hold classes. Right now, in the short run, that building is what it is. You know, that it's going to be a fixed cost and whatnot. It is what it is. But in the long run, that can be changed. That building, we can sell that building and move to an entirely different location. We can build a new building. We can pay that one off and have no debt or anything on it. I don't know if we have debt, so don't think I mean that. Same thing with your house. Your house, in the short run, it's on your balance sheet. There it is. But in the long run, you can move, you can sell it, you can add on to it, you can change it. So in economics, why am I wanting to call it econometrics? I think I've got econometrics on the brain. Now that's something, if you go further in economics, you should take a class in it. It's very interesting. But in economics, what we're looking at is that everything can be changed. The possibilities are endless. We're looking in terms of strategy, not just accounting for what exists and where we're going, but also just strategy of where we're going. What can we do? And we don't want to think that nothing can be changed. All right, I hope I've sufficiently explained that. All right, so also, I just told you production occurs in the short run, but strategy is a long run concept. And that's just a reminder of something that you should remember. Production occurs in the short run. Strategy is a long run concept. So when we're talking about short run costs and long run costs, short run, we're talking about the cost of production. Long run, we're thinking more along the lines of the cost of strategy, okay? Just so you know. And then therefore, your long run is a series of short run cost structures. All right, so your long run is a series of short run cost structures. All right, and it is going to look therefore something like this. All right, so you've got, so we're looking at the long run, so we're going to make that axis extra long, and that is Q right there. I didn't even bother to write it. I'm just going to type it. And costs right there. Okay, so you're going to have on this, now this is Q over time. Okay, so we could even say that. So you're going to have a curve right here. And this curve is your, you could call it short run average total costs 1. All right. And then you can have another one there. And that one can be short run average total cost 2. And so on and so forth. So we're going to draw some of these and see what they look like. So you can go like this, like this. And you can keep this going as far as you like. So it's going to look something like this. So you've got this series of short run average total cost structures. And when you, all right, now this one's going to be trickier for me to draw, but stay with me here. Then when you kind of halfway connect them, that wasn't too bad. You get your long run average total cost. There you go. You get your long run average total cost. See? So the long run, you take this series of short run and they all fit together to form your long run. It makes sense if you think about it, because let's say each one of these is a quarter. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters, and you can do it all the way up to, long run's 5 years. So maybe that's a half a year, 6 months. So 6 months, however you want to measure it, but you can put all of those in there to make your long run. All right, now let's notice something about this. Let's notice right there. Wait a minute, that one. There we go. Okay, so let's notice right here. Right here, your long run, as your output is going up. So your output, you see, is going up that way, but your costs are coming down. All right. So as your output increases, your costs, your long run costs, are coming down. And then, so you have that right here. Okay. And then they get kind of, you see, they flatten out a little bit. Now I drew it right there, but they kind of stay constant for a while. Okay, so let's look right here. Let's mark where that is, that section. And then if we continue to look out, then the costs are increasing. Now our output, this whole time, output has been increasing, but our costs decrease, stay constant, and then they start to increase again. Now, as our output increases, we are increasing our size, our factory size too, okay? Because to increase our outputs, we have to keep increasing our size. So if we look, let's see what we got here. So right here, we've got our long run average total cost, and it is going up. All right, and then here we're going to have our long run average total costs, and it is staying constant. So I'm putting a line over the top of it to show that it stayed constant. And then right here we have long run average total cost, and it is going up. I just messed that up, didn't I? Okay, so let's forget this. It's not going up there, is it? And you all probably caught me in that, and you're waiting for me to catch it, right? How many of you are on the email button right now? All right, take your fingers off the email button. I caught it myself. It's going down right here. There we go. So this one is going down. Right here it's going down. Right here it's staying constant, and then it's going up right here. You can see the way it moves. So what we have are, now let's see, draw these brackets because I like doing that. Not bad. So what we have right here, this is called economies of scale. Okay, so right there, when your costs, this is when okay, so economies of scale right here. This is when long run average total costs decreases as quantity and size increases. Okay, so your long run average total cost decreases as your quantity and size increases. Now, something else this means is that you're able to produce more at no extra average cost and increase in size. So you're able to produce more at no extra average cost and increase in size. Okay? So that's economies of scale. This is a very, very, very good place to be in. All right. This is a very good place to be in because look, you're in the catbird seat there, aren't you? Your costs are going down, your output's going up. As your output goes up, your revenue goes up. So you've got increasing revenue, decreasing costs. It's a great place to be, right? And then you hit, but then eventually you're going to start to need to increase even more. You're going to outgrow that factory size. You're going to have to do other things. You're going to add on more employees, or maybe you get so large you have to add more benefits for these employees, different things that will increase your costs. First, you're going to hit for a brief moment constant economies of scale. Now that is not a bad place to be. That's when your long run average total costs stays constant as output increases. Okay, so right here, economies of scale, your constant economies of scale. So your long run average total cost. So your costs are kind of staying the same. That's the point when really it should set off a red flag for most businesses, because you know, and you being economists, you know now that you hit the economies of scale, the constant, you know what's coming next, right? And this is called diseconomies of scale. Diseconomies of scale. So you know you've got the good, you're staying constant, and then you know that something bad's got to hit because businesses run in a cycle, including profit, loss, costs, all that stuff. So what you've got going on right here, you've got your diseconomies of scale is when your long run average total cost increases as your output increases. Right? So your costs are going up. You're still making more, but the more you make, the more your costs go up. What can be happening at that point is, and your firm is already, it keeps increasing, so your firm gets so big, it becomes limited by its size. But what you might have with that, so your firm gets so big it's limited by its size. I have some stories. These are the more fun stories to share, which is kind of sad because it's a bad thing for the company. But you get things like out of touch executives. You get executives. The company is so big that you have the people at the top that don't know the people at the bottom. I'm sure there was a point in time when Howard Schultz of Starbucks knew every barista in every store he had, and he probably kept that up for a good long while. Now, of course, that's impossible for him to know. So if he makes a decision, something that he knows about the baristas and the locations in Seattle, conditions are different in Georgia, aren't they? And maybe not even Howard Schultz, but perhaps some people that work for him, some other higher ups in the company, perhaps a district manager or something that might even, they're out of touch with what's going on the line. How often do you see these execs coming down to actually work in the store to figure it out? So they're out of touch. You have communication, and one of the first fun videos that I'm going to show you is about communication, cumbersome communication that's poor, it's not efficient, it's not accurate, all those things. We're going to see a video about that, which is kind of fun. And then assessing risk. There's a problem assessing risk because you are so out of touch. So there's that. I'm going to tell the first story I'm going to tell is about Lockheed story, where my father worked at Lockheed. So I'm going to take it off of this right there so that I can talk to you. Okay, so my dad worked at Lockheed. He worked there for 40 years, and he was a maintenance guy there, maintenance supervisor. And I always loved the family days at Christmas when we could go for the Christmas party, and then he would take me on rounds with him to kind of see what was going on. And I always loved that. So we're going on rounds one day, and a guy flags him down and says, "Hey, hang on a second. The water fountain over here is not working. I want to let you know so y'all can fix it." So my dad walks over there to assess the situation, and he sees that the problem with the water fountain is it's unplugged. So it's unplugged, so he just goes, I mean, simple enough, he plugs it back up, right? Easy peasy, problem solved. I think nothing of it. When he gets back to his work truck where I'm waiting on him, he says, "Don't tell anybody I just did that." Well, I'm like amazed, because I'm thinking, I'm a college student at the time, so I'm taking economics, mind you. So I'm thinking to myself, I said, what's wrong with that? I mean, what's wrong? The water fountain was unplugged, you plugged it in. And he said, no, because the way it's supposed to work is that the employee that told him is supposed to file not a complaint, but whatever they call it, I forgot what they called it at the time. But anyway, it was to report this, a report, I guess we'll just say. So they'd file a report that the water fountain's not working. And then he has to take it and assign it, run it through the system, assign it as a work order. And then the employee that gets assigned a work order comes and checks it out. So once that employee checks it out, then they come back and make a report saying it's unplugged. And then he has to assign an employee to go plug up the thing. And it's all done, and this method of doing things, as inefficient as it is, because then it ends up taking a week or so, at least a week, if not longer, to plug in a water fountain. You could say, how many union employees does it take in a water fountain? Because this is all due to the union. That's what he told me. So that's very inefficient. And because I'm an economist and also a bit of a smart aleck, I was saying, that sounds like diseconomies of scale to me. But of course, but now Dad's retired, life's moved on, so I can finally tell that story. But that's diseconomies of scale. The process is just so cumbersome that you can't even plug something in that's unplugged and get it to work again. All right, so then there's some others. So I'm going to show you, without further ado, I'm going to show you these videos from a movie called Office Space. So if you've seen it, then you'll know what I'm talking about with diseconomies of scale, and you're probably saying, yeah, I got that. But in the meantime, let's see if I can get these shared for you, and let's let you enjoy these. Okay, so that's the first one right there. Now you can obviously see, so later we see something with Peter that he's talking about how he's got 8 different bosses. In fact, we're about to see that one now. Each one of them comes by to let him know about the TPS report cover, which isn't a problem. But look at the lost productivity there. And you can definitely tell at the end of that when Peter looks like he's not only screaming on the inside, but he wants to stab that guy in the neck. So, and I can understand that too, because that's very frustrating. So that's an example of very poor communication, diseconomies of scale, because they have all these people really not even knowing. Neither one of those guys knew the other one was stopping by to tell Peter about this. And really, why are we wasting time worrying about a cover sheet on a report, on a faxed report? But thank goodness we don't have to do that anymore. All right, so here's the next one. Okay. So that is one of those where and that's just talking about how employees get in a company that's going through diseconomies of scale, because you've got employees who are doing just enough not to get fired. There's no motivation there. That's what he was talking about. There's no motivation. Probably in the early days of Starbucks, and I know it sounds like I'm picking on them, because I kind of am, I guess, but I really love their products. So I think they're a very well-run company. So I'm just picking on them, definitely hypothetically. But in the early days, it's possible and likely but probable that Howard Schultz and those right under him knew everybody in the company. And now now of course that's impossible. It's a national company now. So to figure what would motivate a barista and a manager in Georgia versus Seattle, maybe, maybe not, or maybe, and in this case, it's probably not the same, but in a lot of these big companies, and I talk to people who work at them, and I know they do I've worked for some myself before I got into teaching, that they do just enough not to get fired. That is a very accurate statement. Just enough to keep from getting fired. I confess that I did the same thing myself. I've worked in companies before just hard enough not to get fired. Not with teaching, because I hope you can tell I really love that. But but that's true. If you're not motivated, if you don't feel like anybody cares or even notices what you're doing, nobody notices what you're doing. Why not? So the bosses are not fully aware of Peter, because he says he ducks in 15 minutes late, uses the side door. They don't know what's going on. They're out of touch with what's going on. And truthfully, he should be doing, if he's getting paid to do a job, he should do the job. But also, sometimes there are people who shouldn't be doing. Sometimes in a company that gets so big, you're limited by your size, you might see a group of employees who really have no job, that for some reason there's so many employees that there's so much overlap that there's not enough for everyone to do. So that's our final video here, is going to be something about this, and it's very, very funny.
Don't look now, but there's something funny going on over there at the bench.
Okay. All right, the next videos, I've got a series of videos that I like to show some in the class, because I speak fluent movie, and sometimes, and I think art does imitate life most of the time. So we can see a few more movie clips another time for another lesson. Anyway, so what you saw in the last one there, you have employees. So what exactly, and I love that part, that always gets everyone when he says, what is it you do here? So that is funny to me, because how many people do you run into that you wonder that too? What exactly is your purpose here? And sometimes there's not one, and that's diseconomies of scale. If there's not a purpose for an employee, if they don't have a defined parameter of their job, that's diseconomies of scale. Maybe they had one at one time, maybe the company evolves. That makes sense as a company grows. but employees should have a defined purpose. Otherwise, there's a lack of work incentive there. There's no motivation there because you got to do something, right? I mean, as much as we say, oh, I'd love to just sit around and get paid for doing nothing, you really wouldn't, because that would be boring, and none of us want to be bored, right? I don't want to be bored. I want to be sitting here sharing economics with you fine folks. So anyway, that is it for today. That might be just a bit smaller than normal, or maybe it's about right. I don't know because I'm not seeing a timer here. But either way, I hope you enjoyed it, and the next one is coming up real soon, so try not to get too impatient waiting for that. Thanks a lot.